The room spins around Vine as she struggles to keep her balance, her head pounding with fever, but her mother in law's sharp voice cuts through the haze. She immediately gained back focus and came to her senses after hearing her voice. She looked behind, and all her mother in law said was demanding that she continues with her chores. She was cleaning the stairs, even when there were a lot of maids in the house who could do the same. Mom, I'm getting dizzy now. Vine hesitated while her face showed all of the weakness she has been feeling. Can I do this later? Or maybe tomorrow? Stop with your excuses and keep going. I told you on your first day here not to refuse any order that I give you. And you're already doing that when it hasn't even been a month of your marriage? I didn't refuse anything. Vine tries to protest. I'm just asking if you could delay it for some time. I'm going to do this eventually. She tried to explain, but her words fall on deaf ears. Stop talking back and keep doing what you're assigned to before Jungkook comes home, she says and goes away in her room, leaving Vine alone to clean up the stairs. She held her head and hit it a few times to come in her senses and continued cleaning. She pushed herself to keep working, her body growing weaker with each passing moment. But she still kept going on, slowly, one step after another, carefully, because she doesn't want to fall. After a few minutes, she was finally done with the work and thought of taking some rest. But Vine and Jungkook's mother heard the engine of Jungkook's car whirring. That made them realize he came back. They both went towards the door and stood behind it to greet him. It's a kind of ritual in their home that his mother made up and she has to follow. Always greeting her husband the first thing when he comes home and take his bag, his coat, prepare meals for him and serve, and ask if he needs anything else. And Jungkook, who doesn't know anything about the chores she does the whole day, lets her take care of him a bit to show his mom. But he takes care of her in return as well. At this point, she couldn't even stand up properly. She tried her hardest, but this wasn't working anymore. After a few seconds of waiting, suddenly everything went black. Vine collapses, her body unable to withstand the strain any longer. In an instant, strong and muscular arms catch her in their grip, pulling her close. Vine's eyes flutter open to find herself cradled in arms of her mafia husband, Jungkook. She could feel the warmth of his body against hers. His heart beat steady and reassuring. And then her eyes closed. Everything was stopped, and she was finally at peace. Vine, what happened? Jungkook's voice laid with concern as he gazes down at her, his voice filled with worry. He kept shaking her arms and her spine, with which he was holding her, but she didn't gain back consciousness. He called her name a multiple times, which made her eyes flutter open for a brief second again, as she didn't try to make any sense out of what she was seeing. I'm sorry, Vine stammers, her voice weak. I couldn't keep, I couldn't, and there she goes again, her eyes closed, face red and swollen, body hot as fire because of the fever. Vine, look here, it's me. Do you recognize me? he stated in her ears in a loud voice, but she didn't move. Her mother was watching the whole scene without saying anything, as she thought it must be another one of her excuses. He carefully lifts Vine into his arms after nodding to her mother, carrying her to their bedroom with a tenderness that he never had for anyone but her. He lays her down on the bed, pulling the covers up around her to keep her warm. He sat beside her and kept massaging her hands to keep her temperature moderate while constantly putting an ice pack on her forehead. All while his heart was pounding in his chest because of the fear of losing someone he didn't know was so close to her, close enough to leave his heart pounding in his chest when seeing her in pain. When he began to notice that her body was getting cold to its normal temperature, he put off the ice bag and waited for her to get up. In the meantime, he wanted to know what even happened to her. He decided to ask his mom, but then he remembered how she didn't even have a single expression on her face when she saw Vine being fainted, as if she knew something like this would happen. Jungkook called his personal maid to ask her about what happened. His eyes widened and fists clenched at his sides when he heard that it's not just today. His mother makes her work day and night, despite of all the servants in the house. She made Vine a servant of herself. The maid went away after spilling everything to Jungkook, but his anger didn't wash away for long. He knew he needed to talk to her about this, and this is something that cannot wait. After entering the room, he saw her laying down on her bed so comfortably, as if nothing happened to Vine earlier, in front of her own eyes. At this point, he was sure of every word his maid said. Jungkook, why are you here? His mother looked at him with surprise. Come, sit with me. Jungkook, Mom, we need to talk. What is it, Jungkook? Is everything alright? Jungkook, no, it's not. You saw Vine being fainted right in front of you, but you didn't come once in the room to ask if she was fine. His mother smiled. Of course she must be fine. She has you. I know you wouldn't leave her alone. Jungkook sighed as he saw her covering up for what she did. I found out that you made her work even though she was sick. He lashed out on her, his dark gaze piercing into hers. Oh, Dad, it was just a small task, nothing serious, she said casually, her voice showing no care. Jungkook, it doesn't matter. She was unwell, and you shouldn't have asked her to do anything. I was just trying to help around the house. She's my daughter-in-law after all. Jungkook, I didn't hire all these servants for you to order her for all the household stuff. If you needed more of them, you should have told me. I will hire more. His voice and gaze completely different. The voice was soft, which he had forcefully, but his eyes were dark and empty. Jungkook, the marriage was already against her will, and now you're making her do this? Don't you feel bad for her at all? Why are you taking it out on me? You think it was all my fault that she is unwell? How much did she badmouth about me? His words stuck there in his throat. If she was someone else than his mother, he would have at least slapped her. He stayed quiet for a while and then spoke. She hadn't even woke up for her to badmouth about you. His fists unclenched, his fingers resting. It's been a while that I'm talking to you, but you didn't once ask me how was she, or if she woke up or not. And you expect me to believe you? She made her face and looked away from him in the other direction in anger. He nodded in denial. I will talk to you later. Right now, she needs me, and I'm going for her. But don't forget that this is not over, he said, and after clenching his jaw, he went outside the room, up the stairs in his bedroom, while his mother stayed there, still not believing that it was all her fault. As soon as he entered the room, he saw her laying down, but with her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. He quickly went there beside her and put a hand on her forehead as he asked, Are you okay? Why didn't you call me if you woke up? He asked. His voice showed visible care for her. I thought you must be tired and eating, she stated in a low whisper, her voice weak. I didn't want to disturb you as you came after working the whole day, and the least I could do was spare some time for you to eat without any discomfort. He breathed a few breaths while looking at her, his heart melting for her. Wine. He brushed her hair away from her face. You are not a discomfort. You are my. He stopped as he looked at her, staring at himself for him to continue. You are my wife, even if against your will. The least I can do is stay with you when you're feeling bad. She took a deep breath of relief and moved his eyes away from him, not believing he said something like this. How are you feeling now? He asked with concern, his eyes demanding answers. She smiled and nodded. A lot better after resting a bit. He smiled back, and the completely unexpected kiss from him on her forehead pressed down on her skin, making her eyes widen and cheeks blush furiously. Just rest now. I will handle everything, he says softly, his voice filled with determination. He stayed by her side, got her a glass of water, and let her just rest beside himself so that no one dares to bother her any more. He knew he needed to talk to her about his mother, but what he didn't know was if this was the right time to do it or not. I hate seeing you like this. He started, thinking that it needs to be sorted out as soon as possible. That's why you should have told me why my mom was harassing you, he said, looking straight ahead without in her direction. While she looked at him as soon as he asked that. How how did you know? Does that matter? What matters is you might probably didn't trust me enough to share your problems with me. Fine. I How could I tell you when she asked me not to? I didn't want to disrespect her, she said hesitatingly because she was lying. It's been only a month of their marriage. She thought he would definitely take his mother's side without believing her, so she thought it was pointless. At this point, he looked at her in her eyes, searching for truth. No, you're lying. His eyes glued on hers. You didn't trust me, and again, it's not your fault. I didn't give you any reason to trust me. Fine. No, it's not like that. You respect your mom so much, so I thought you. Jungkook. Same thing. Fine. I'm sorry. He scoffed. Again. You're doing that again. Stop being so innocent. You're my wife. Know it in your heart. No one can hurt you or say anything to you against your will. Not even me. She stared back in his eyes and found out how intensely he was looking at her. It sent a shiver down her spine. You're going to tell me everything from now on, okay? Even if it's about my mom. Despite their arranged marriage and his tough exterior, Jungkook genuinely cared for her well being, and it was all shown in that intense eye contact that he had with her. And in that moment, she realizes that she cares for him too. She wants to protect him too, more than she ever thought possible. Hmm. She simply nodded once, while her heart, accepting the man in front of her, accepted the fact that she was his and he was hers from now on. Or maybe it always was like this. She just couldn't find it out. They stayed there, eyes locked, lying down beside each other, the most pleasurable place for him and the safest place for her. She finally took the first step. Can I ask you for one more favor? Jungkook. Of course, anything. Fine. Can you stay with me until I fall asleep? He smiled at her and replied, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. She smiled back and he held her hand in his embrace, staying by her side until she fell asleep.